Welcome back to Beyond the Map. I'm Buddy T, and tonight we're not exploring strange craft in the skies. We're exposing the system that keeps them hidden. Tonight's strange story comes from the halls of our government and the private partners that they employ. This story is what I call legacy lockdown. It's the way whistleblowers who step forward about UAPs are silenced. They're pressured and they're locked into secrecy. So, to see how it works, we'll walk through the testimony of Dylan Borland, a veteran and a contractor whose story reveals the hidden playbook of keeping the UAP truths out of the public view. Perhaps it'll be helpful for us to recall just exactly who Dylan Borland is before we go much further. Dylan Borland recently testified in front of the Congressional Oversight Committee about personally witnessing an off-world craft near a NASA hangar on Langley Air Force Base. He had firsthand experience with that, and he testified as well as provided his testimony beforehand to the Inspector General's office and to Arrow. Now, this man is a career intelligence professional, a geospatial intelligence specialist, and ever since he has come forward with this information, he has endured sustained reprisals. I don't know any other way to say it other than that, but it gets very deep. Dylan Borland's experience, along with others who've come before him, this is the basis for tonight's Beyond the Map strange story. Within the last couple of days, Jeremy Corbell and George Knapp have released Dylan Borland's interview, part 2, on the Weaponized podcast. And I'd encourage you highly to watch that entire interview. But we'll be looking at some of the things that he said in the Weaponized podcast and some of the reprisals that he's endured. I'll be sure and put links in the description to the full podcast so you can watch it all should you choose. Now, Dylan appeared on the Weaponized podcast with George Knapp and Jeremy Corbell recently, and here's what he had to say.
That's about.
Well, we can go into it. I don't know how much is going to come out.
Okay. Let's hear it, and then we'll figure it out later.
So basically, hypothetically speaking, let's say that I claim I saw Bigfoot running around Nevada test range, and I saw Bigfoot outside the Starbucks, and Bigfoot was wearing a U.S. Air Force uniform. If I said that to Arrow or to the IG, but mainly Arrow, and Arrow comes back and says, and I draw a nice picture of Bigfoot in a pretty Air Force uniform. Let's say Arrow comes back and says, hey, Dylan, you talking about Starbucks is unclassified. You talking about Bigfoot in that military uniform? That's TS, no foreign. You are never to say another word about that. That's what Arrow did to me, and they classified everything I brought forward.
So you're working for BAE and for somebody else.
Yep.
For somebody else in the structure of
Multi-agency special access program. Yes, sir.
and it's under the umbrella of a private company.
The private company is how they are getting us to work there, but it is all under the umbrella of that agency.
The information you had about these flying Tic Tacs that people are taking down, do you get that information through your work at BAE and that agency?
There were people who ended up working there with me who were brought into the legacy program whose lives were also destroyed, and they believed, based off of what I was saying about what I experienced in my life, the triangle, what I knew that to be true at that point, they believed I was read into the program, and they believed that because I was having the clearance issues and the VA issues and everything else, the financial, what they did to me, they were experiencing it too. And there were multiple people who I was working with that were a part of what is conveyed as the legacy program.
So you're
Dylan Borland worked inside the defense contracting world at BAE Systems, connected to highly classified programs. Like David Grusch and others before him, Dylan wasn't just confronted with unusual craft, he was confronted with how the system reacts to anyone who talks. And his story maps out a cycle: classify, isolate, and discredit. It's the cycle that locks down the legacy UAP programs from ever seeing the light of day. And here's how the trap works. Imagine that Dylan tells investigators he saw Bigfoot at Starbucks. Well, that's fine, unclassified. But if Bigfoot is wearing an Air Force uniform, that detail gets stamped into top secret. So that's what happened with this testimony. He submitted 3 sketches. One was left unclassified. 2 were immediately thrown into special access programs. And those 2 sketches, Dylan says, proves that we're not alone. This selective classification isn't just about security, it's a lockdown mechanism, taking inconvenient details and burying them in places that Congress and public will never see. But the lockdown doesn't stop at paperwork. It moves into people's lives. Dylan says his clearance was frozen, not revoked, not terminated, just stuck in limbo, what he calls clearance purgatory. He couldn't transfer. He couldn't take another job.
Even when I went to Senate, when I went to Congress, I was shaking.
Is this why your clearance was sort of put in limbo? It doesn't exist because you're saying things you shouldn't be talking about.
I think early on it was a mistake, and I talked with Dave Grusch about this. I think early on it was a mistake. They were notified 6-7 months into it, and then from then on, they outright just did not care. They terrorized me. I mean, I would go into work. They were notified by multiple companies that they were not housing my clearance correctly. Multiple companies tried to pick me up. Multiple companies said they would give me a pay raise, a better job. I couldn't take any of it. They notified BAE, they filed complaints, and I got the runaround between the company, the 2 agencies that I work for. But long story short, it is my opinion in hindsight, and other people who are also whistleblowers and other people have worked in these programs, that is a standard operating procedure by these people to keep this quiet.
Your career has been in classified programs.
Yeah.
Your training has been in classified programs. They now tell you you don't have a clearance. You can't go to work anywhere else. You are frozen here, whether you like it or not.
Yep, 16 hours a day, doing night shift, weekends, holidays for $62,000
He was trapped
a year.
in endless shifts for low pay, and others around him, people who had touched UAP information, they were pushed into the same corner. Careers shattered, families strained, and lives derailed. And then came the reprisals. Messages on his work computer reminding him to stay quiet. The VA doctors labeling him as delusional in medical records, and even a brake line incident on his car where police privately shared that it looked like it was sabotage.
I go and I'll process early, and as soon as I sign the paperwork, I walk out of the office, and the company that hired me contacts me, and they say, your clearance has been erased again. So I lose my clearance in May. That's May of 2018. The company that hired me went to their prime, which was at that point CACI. And for about a month, they are working, at least they're telling me they're working on getting my clearance fixed. And in early mid-June, I am contacted by the company that hired me, and they said, we are unable to get your clearance back in the system. We have to move on to other candidates. Good luck out there. We don't think you're ever going to get your clearance fixed. That night I was invited out. And I was getting ready to sell my vehicles. I had pulled my 401k at this point because I knew I was done. I had filed for unemployment, which they denied me for. And on the way home, I totaled my car, and there was a police investigation, and the police had told me in confidence that my brake lines were cut. They wanted it to look like a suicide, which goes into what the VA was doing with me and the medical issues and the doctors that had resigned and all that.
This is the human cost of legacy lockdown. And make no mistake, these are allegations of criminal conduct that Dylan's making. Here's the key. Dylan's story is not unique. David Grusch described the same thing and called it administrative terrorism. Bob Lazar in 1989 described nearly identical intimidation. Different eras, different people, but the pattern repeats: surveillance, discrediting, and total career destruction. It's not random. It's a playbook. And if multiple whistleblowers across decades describe the same tactics, well, that just tells us the lockdown isn't just real, it's intentional. This matters because without safe, functioning channels, whistleblowers will always be punished and not protected. And when testimony gets immediately swept into these SAPs, Congress can't provide oversight. The truth isn't just hidden, it's locked down by design. So if you want real disclosure, you don't just need transparency about the craft, you need transparency about the process. And that process is broken. So here's the question. Do you believe classification is being used to protect us, or to protect programs from us? I'd like to hear your take. Drop a comment below. Is this lockdown about security or is it about control? And if you know of other whistleblower cases with the same pattern, maybe frozen clearances, discrediting tactics, suspicious reprisals, share them. I'll try to connect the dots in a future episode. Thanks for joining me on Beyond the Map. Subscribe here on YouTube. Follow at Beyond the Map UAP on X or at Beyond the Map Podcast on X. And catch the podcast version on Spotify and Apple. Until next time, stay curious, stay skeptical, and keep looking beyond the map.